Jackson Ragland.
Carroll Jackson Ragland, Dr. Carroll Jackson Ragland, was born April 22nd, 1834 in Halifax County, Virginia, to William and Elsie Estes Ragland. He was the seventh of 14 children. He was actually left without his father's care at the age of 12 years old. He went to learn a molder's trade and served an apprenticeship out in Virginia, 6 years and 4 months with the firms of Cruz and Rodenheiter. Later he went to North Carolina, associating himself with the firm of Ragland and Petty in the plow manufacturing business, and he continued this up until the American Civil War took place. The firm of Ragland and Petty was run by his oldest brother, John Ragland, and it was a plow manufacturing business. In the first firm he was with as an apprentice, when he was about 14 years old, he was learning how to make and mold plow blades and so forth for another firm. He served as a Confederate. He is a Confederate veteran. He served as a private in Company E of the 16th Virginia Infantry. And then he became a doctor after the war. I think he did have some doctoring experience during the war, because it's usually said in conjunction with the war about him starting to become a doctor. And I think he probably did serve a little bit with the Medic Corps, but I haven't got that firmly established yet. The 16th Virginia Infantry Regiment was an infantry regiment raised in 1861 in Portsmouth in southeastern Virginia for service in the Confederate States Army during the American Civil War. The regiment fought almost exclusively with the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, led by General Robert E. Lee. The battles that they fought in were the First Battle of Manassas, the 7 Days Battles, the Second Battle of Manassas, the battles of Sharpsburg, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, Gettysburg, Cold Harbor, leading up to the siege of Petersburg. This unit stayed intact, losing members and joining new members to this unit. But literally, all 8 of the largest battles of the American Civil War was the unit that this man was attached to during those early days. Now, what part of it and how long he served with that, I don't know. He was one of 4 brothers, the 4 Ragland brothers. He's one of 20, well, first of all, he's one of the 20 Confederate veterans that we have that are buried here in Bond County. He and 4 of his brothers all served in the Confederate Army in different units. His youngest brother is also my uncle, Uncle Isaac Monroe Ragland. He is buried down at the Hood Cemetery at Millersburg, Illinois. My 4 great-grandfathers, Ben Ragland, lived in the Brick Church neighborhood just east of Millersburg. And all of his family, all my ancestors, are buried in the Campground Cemetery. William Glasgow, in this cemetery, is buried in the very far western end of the cemetery, actually up where all the newer stones are. He's one of your Confederate veterans. And also Charles Martin, and I believe he's buried here in the older part of the cemetery, but I don't know for sure where. Dr. Ragland is buried right here on the front row by that white truck, basically where the tailgate is. If you look to the right of it, you'll see 2 little white flags, and that's where he is buried. He started reading medicine and practicing dentistry, believed, during the Civil War. After the war was over, he moved to Butler, Kentucky, and practiced medicine and dentistry there. In 1867 and 68, he attended medical college in Nashville, Tennessee. In 1869, he migrated to Montgomery County, Illinois, up near Coffeen. Several of his sisters were living up there at that time. He then moved, while he was up there, he married a lady named Sarah J. McCaslin. He thence moved to Bond County, Illinois, here in Mulberry Grove, where he continued to practice the medicine up to the time of his passing, May 11th of 1881. He died of typhoid fever. He was probably an epidemic, and probably being the doctor serving here in the area, probably caught it from somebody that he was trying to help, in all honesty. He left a wife, 4 dear little children. He didn't marry until he was about 38 years old in typical Ragland fashion. As I said, it was a rather large family of 14 children. He had 4 children in 8 years, I believe. His youngest son was about 1 year old when he passed away. He was only 47 years old and was actually a relatively young man at the time. His widow remarried one of her brother-in-laws. This man's sister passed away, and she then married her husband, and so he ended up raising the children. Of the 14 Ragland children, 10 of them migrated to Bond County, Illinois, from Virginia and North Carolina. They lived in the Danville area, which is right on the southern edge of Virginia, right in the central part of the state and right on the southern border. They're within about 10 miles of the border of North Carolina. Right across from there is a large town, I can't remember the name of it, but a lot of them either lived in North Carolina at that town or up at the other town in Virginia. Of the 14 children, 10 of them actually came here to Illinois. One went on to Missouri, one went on to Texas. My grandfather, Ben, after his wife had passed away, a couple of the children, was about 75 years old. He went back out to see a couple of his siblings that were still alive. He ended up marrying and living out there in that area, and he's actually buried out in Halifax, Virginia. All of his family was here. In fact, my family was a little annoyed at him. Nobody knew until I solved the problem in my family. This is something, I solved the mystery. I solved the genealogy mystery, Cindy. I have not known for 40 years. I've wondered where he died, when he died, and where he's buried. I always had it listed as last known living in 1920. One of the family members died and he's still alive there. I'm now able to get on the internet and find where he is buried with the second wife out there in Virginia. But he's laid to rest out there. But Dr. Ragland, of course, is buried right here. A couple other Confederates are also in the area. And you have to remember, in those days and times, the reason the Confederates were here in this area is the southern economy was just simply shot at that time. And these families had to migrate somewhere to go to get work elsewhere. And like I say, the sisters all married men up in the Coffeen area. How they come to Coffeen, Illinois, I don't know. From Coffeen, they spread out with the brothers coming here to Bond County and farming primarily, and Dr. Jackson being a doctor. Thank you.
Of that Ragland family?
Yes, yes, that is the same. She is Ragland from the same family. Yes.
Okay. Then the teacher here in Mulberry Grove,
Was that Ethel? Was that Ethel Ragland?
Viola.
Viola Ragland. Viola was a cousin of Ethel's, and Ethel was one of my 42nd cousins. She always told me, there was a couple of Raglands that were cousins of the family that also migrated here, and that's who they were. Betty and Ethel were both part of that, and that old teacher here in this area were descendants. Yeah, Viola Ragland. They were descendants of a man named Stephen Comer Ragland. He was a first cousin of these three brothers that I just talked about. But they were also here at the same time.